Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise. And we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Mogobe. I'm the host of this show, Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. It's always a pleasure to join you and give you yet another game changer, yet another difference maker in our community who is here to inspire and to enthuse you. And please, if you haven't subscribed already, please press the subscribe button below. My guest today is Kennedy, and Kennedy is will introduce himself in greater detail in a moment. Kennedy Letlhogela is going to share on issues of international trade, but mostly he's going to be talking to us about international development and opportunities that exist in the space of international development. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay. Would you be kind enough to tell the viewers who you are and share a little bit of your background?
Okay. So my name is Kennedy Letlhogela. I am an international development practitioner. Mm-hmm. That's what they refer to us as. Yeah. Okay, so professionally I am with an organization called the German Development Corporation under a program called Strengthening National Regional Linkages in SADC, which is a SADC-led program that is funded by the EU and the German government to give technical support to the SADC Secretariat and its member states.
Okay.
And I serve in that capacity as a junior technical advisor with a portfolio based in the member states. Under my portfolio, I support about 5 countries. That is Batswana, Lesotho, Eswatini, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Namibia. Okay. And my expertise are around trade industrialization, agriculture, and infrastructure. So beyond just advising on regional integration, these are the thematic areas I am more dwelled into. Beyond that, I am also a consultant. I run a consulting firm of my own with a few partners where we are doing work in very different areas of international development, and through that I have done consultancies for a lot of organizations. I've consulted for the African Union, I've consulted for International Trade Center, I've consulted for Africa Practice, the United Nations Development Program, and G3 in the UK, the Chinese government, so many entities really. And this is how international development for me goes hand in hand. I do it as a 9-to-5, but also I am in it as a business consultant.
Yeah. Very, very fascinating. Tell us about academic background and training.
Okay. So I have an international relations degree from a university in Russia called the Nizhny Novgorod State University. That's where I spent most of my tertiary life. Getting my undergrad there. I have a BSc in International Relations, and I am currently enrolled for 2 master's programs.
2 at a go.
2 at a go. One with the University of Batswana to fulfill development studies, and another with the very same university in Russia to do my master's in international relations. Yeah.
Okay, fascinating, fascinating. On the entrepreneurial side, what consultancy are you doing?
So my consultancy is really more on, so I do a lot of strategy consultancy. I do monitoring and evaluation as well now, which is to develop monitoring and evaluation systems, a lot of communication strategies. So by way of example, in Ethiopia, I was with the African Union Trade Department to support the development of the communication strategy for the AFCFTA. And for the International Trade Center, I was supporting what they called the World Export Development Forum. So what I was doing is sort of like coming up with a strategy for youth inclusion on the actual platform, which was the World Export Development Forum. So most of my work really is around strategy, predominantly communications, now also going into M&E, and yeah.
Very fascinating. All right, we're going to talk about international development and opportunities available there. Can we have a working definition of international development? What are we talking about?
International development really is to mean development, really, to develop policies and to, bridge existing gaps that are hindering development. Predominantly now, we call it international development, but I like to term it African development. I term it African development because, well, at least the space I'm in is work around Africa, and with the African Union and with many other organizations that are charged with the responsibility of ensuring that we are building policies that bring some social-economic development, right? Of course, it's not only Africa. We have other parts of the world where also international development is prevalent. We have places like Hawaii where, let's say, after disasters or natural disasters, there's that element of having to rebuild. That still falls under international development. Building economies, it could be building anything really. Building systems that are functional.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of lifting Africa, I've heard of phrases bandied around like the African Renaissance, Africa Rise. These days, what is the common, if you like, cliche on Africa? I call it a cliche because people like to box us in and say, all this is about getting Africa to rise. And sometimes I wonder, how many renaissances are we going to have in Africa? Would you say a word or two about the state of thinking about issues around renaissance and Africa rising?
I think typically what I see now, or at least what I'm now accustomed to, at a point where I view things differently because I'm now part of the system. But I can tell you that there is a very different shift in the paradigm, right? And what I am seeing now, and even conversations around the Africa we want, was typically really to take away from African development, or what it should be, being influenced by other people but us, right? And I think this is why the Haile Selassies have had the conversation for many years, even beyond us.
Nkurumas,
then the Nkurumas,
yeah,
to say we need to find a way in which Africa now interconnects, so that it is able to support each other through its growth. Otherwise, our growth will forever be influenced and detected by other people. And we see this now by, the effort we're making in platforms like the AFCFTA, where now we are really talking about the Africa we want. And even the kind of support we're getting from international donors now, it has shifted from, financial aid is not what it used to be,
It's not about aid, it's about cooperation.
It's about cooperation, and that's why we are now calling it international cooperating partners. And we've moved away from international aid, which, scholars like Dembisa Moyo have already said that international aid is dead, and it shouldn't have been there in the first place, because it has bred so many malfunctions within a system that was supposed to work towards something.
Yeah. All right. How did you yourself get into international development? Did you just stumble into it, or?
So I think part of I had always known that it was something I'd wanted to do. Yeah. But obviously, when you're much younger, you can't quantify it and exactly say. So I went through a lot of motions of who I really wanted to become within international development, right? First, I knew I was a great debater at high school. That's all I knew. And I wanted a job that would pin that to, and use my talent to, then I thought law,
Yeah.
which is totally outside international development. But slowly realized, no, but also I like the element of politics, but do I want to be a politician? So, you know, then I thought maybe study politics, but then I had a teacher in high school who had always, you know, talked about opportunity, well, tried to shape, and they could see that this boy was really strong in the social sciences, but could care less about math and sciences, you know. So we discussed this, and at some point, you know, my teacher was like, well, you can take politics and then later on international relations. I read more about international relations and realized that there are universities that offer it at the interim. So that's how I got into it at that level. I then went into studying it at varsity, and through that also I had motions of really trying to figure out what exactly did I mean when I said I want to go into international relations or international development. At the time I wanted to go into military and you know, national security, anti-terrorism. In fact, my dissertation at the time when I finished school was, yes, focused on regional economic communities, but more on what they can do, the SADCs, what they can do in terms of terrorism. And in fact, I did go and intern for a national a security kind of firm when I finished in Cape Town. And then decided, you know, maybe that is not the kind of international development I wanted. I got an internship as a communications intern with GIZ at the time, and I was to support the SADC Secretariat's public relations unit. Did that, and then...
This is shortly after school?
Yes, after university. Felt you know, I liked it. It was within the space, but still felt I'm not fulfilling some of the work that I also want to do, more than just communications.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
But I was privileged to be in a program that focused specifically on regional integration. So when one person resigns, I had to act. When, you know, at the time my mentor and my boss got another position elsewhere, and I took up more.
Was this?
2018 June.
Oh, okay.
That's when I did my first internship.
4 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
That's when I did my internship with GIZ. After that, I took on a consultancy to support the SADC Secretariat. Then went to Ethiopia to do the consultancies for about a year, and then came back to now take on this position I'm in.
All right.
So it evolved into many different
Am I right in saying that in this field you interact a lot with politicians, even though you're not a politician? Do you have to be somewhat adapt, or shall I say, you know, you have to be versatile in some ways?
Yes, the job requires a lot of political sensitivity. My job is to advise national structures in member states. So I work directly with ministries in different countries. So 1 minute I am working with the Ministry of Trade in the DRC, and they have a totally different way of doing things even politically. And their bureaucracy within the system is much different from the way things are done in Botswana. Then quickly after that, I have to do things the way Botswana would like them done. And then I am in Eswatini in the very same room with the princess, who is also the Minister of Communications, and there's a very different way of how they do things traditionally also because it's a monarchy. So it requires a lot of not only diversity, but also political sensitivity, political willingness to learn also, and want that knowledge acquisition. And you have to be really open-minded to know that things are very different wherever you go. I found it very challenging, especially because, like you say, working with government officials, being a young person, you know, my haircut has a line, it never changes even outside COVID. Sometimes I like to wear my suits with sneakers, you know. So I've had to balance trying to be very young and ambitious, but also being politically correct within a system that is not too accommodating of innovation or change, you know.
Which leads us to the next point I want us to teach on in terms of available opportunities. There could be entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs out there looking at you and wondering, are there really opportunities in this space for somebody who's entrepreneurially inclined, or generally for Batswana? What opportunities are available in this space?
Certainly there are a lot of opportunities. I mean, I was talking to a young person just recently who has a consultancy firm that deals with a lot of sexual health issues, and they do a lot of work here in Botswana, yes, but when we were having a conversation and I realized just how much there has been need in parts of Central Africa for consultants in that space to support funders to develop a lot of systems, programming that is to assist with eradication of HIV and AIDS or whatever. There are those opportunities. It's just that what we haven't intelligently done as Batswana, or perhaps as bodies that govern Batswana and open these doors. My pocket square. Is that we have not created that linkage or established the platform for young people to know that this particular work that you do should not only end here. We are hoping this will change with some of the developments. For instance, the AFCFTA should be able to bridge some of the existing gaps of lack of opportunities or knowledge of opportunities for Batswana to go into Africa. So there's that hope, because when we talk about services, even under the AFCFTA, it means that a consultant in Botswana should be able to render their services through that platform to Kenya or to Sudan
You and I met on a platform when we were discussing precisely that, AFCTA. Now you've opened the Pandora's box, so I have no choice but to dig deeper there and just say to you, can you just elaborate? We're waiting for the Botswana government to ratify, and I'm hoping they'll ratify in June, like one of the chief negotiators mentioned. But what are you saying post-ratification? What specific opportunities can the young people take advantage of within the AFCTA framework?
Okay, so I think our challenge also, just as development practitioners, where I sit also, has always been national policies or regional protocols that are signed but not domesticated into law, because
domestic law.
Into domestic law, international law. So the ratification really means that we can now start implementing, right? So now implementation also should not only be left at a legal high level place, right? So now we need to start thinking about interventions to support the market access, because the access won't just create itself. We will still have all of these multinational companies that are sitting in these other countries who have the upper hand because they already have the full view of the market, right? So now it would then take our government to now sit down with entities that are charged with the responsibility of not only creating the market, but also to incubate business development in Botswana, to these small businesses to say, okay, this looks like this, but for us to get it at a place where it competes with a multinational company that is sitting in Tanzania, who also want to sell to Sudan, we need to capacitate you in this manner, right? Now the conversation has to be, who's charged with that responsibility? The Ministry of Trade would then have to sit and say, BITC, do market access. LEA, we are thinking capacitate here. CEDA, this is where we're going. How are we creating the value chains? And also to package and say, we are not only, what are we selling as Botswana? We have to go as a brand. We have to establish the services that we have outside the goods that we want to sell. So because you and I having a conversation really not only about the FCFTA and goods and precisely, right? But also services. As a consultant, that is a service. How are you selling it to a local market, to a foreign market? But also who gives you entry into that market is a conversation that we need to start having. Once,
because I think one area where people don't may not understand is the protocols involved. Are you able to speak to that and explain a little bit about the protocols that come with the AFCTA? The one on services, the one on, I think, manufacturing, the one on... Are you able to say something on that?
So yes, certainly the AFCFTA comes with many protocols, with a few protocols rather. And as you've said, there's a protocol on goods and services. There's a protocol on manufacturing. There are also protocols on. There's one on, if I believe, on just issues of trade barrier. You know, cross-border issues and all of that. There's one on communications as well. So protocols are there to ensure that we demystify and sort of like break down something that is high level so you just don't group it and call it the AFCFTA. Particularly so that you are able to charge very different technical expertise to one protocol specifically. And when you break it down, it becomes easy for you also to see where does free movements of people sit within which protocol.
Yes.
You know, where does you know,
non-tariff barriers
non-tariff sit. Where does you know, issues of labor relation. Can I work in Namibia as a Batswana? You know, those are the other things beyond just trading this into Lesotho that the AFCFTA was charged to do. And so that's why we've broken them down into different protocols.
Wonderful. What qualities do you think a person needs to possess for them to survive and thrive in the space of international development?
As a young person?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to clarify that because you know, there are parts of international development that I think were predominantly meant for as retirement plans for either politicians or for senior level government officials. Because you come into international development and you realize that all of these other people you work with at the AU were either permanent secretaries in their countries, ministers, and they have so much experience, you know. So now here we are, young people saying we also want to get into that space. The reception is not always welcome. We come with new ways of doing things, innovative way of doing things. Sometimes they are very welcome, especially in an age where now we had COVID, you know, and you are thinking, who's the youngest person in the team who could now help us think about ways in which we can still interact with different countries or online platforms, but still, you know. But what I've come to learn is that you have to be patient, certainly, but you have to be thriving. As young people, we unfortunately have to work 3 times harder, you know.
Why?
You don't have, your report is not given a, you know, an okay, let's just let this mistake go. Particularly because you are not a former PS and you don't have the respect that your colleague has in the, you know what I mean?
In the system.
In the system, right? And you don't only have to prove for yourself, but you have to prove for many other young people that you are deserving of this opportunity and they also are deserving of the similar opportunity when you now move on. You know, they shouldn't be filling my position with someone older because they feel I've made the mess, I've made a mess of the whole thing. Right?
In other words, you should be allowed room to make mistakes.
I should be allowed room to make mistakes, but there's also, so I think there's generally, in terms of character, you need to be hardworking, you have to be open-minded, certainly. You will take on, and you have to be patient, you'll take on the administrative parts of the job that is not so nice. It will take you time to get to a point where you are now negotiating or sitting down at ministerial level, and you, but you get there, there.
How do you deal with the problem of language barriers with, you know, mixed with Francophone and, you know, also Anglophone countries, and then of course we have Portuguese from Angola and Mozambique. How do you deal with that? How do you manage? Do you have to be multilingual?
In most cases, it helps to be. You will get an advantage when you are. So in varsity, I studied both French and Russian. French, which now becomes a language that is, you know, is assisting me more now at work. But I don't speak Portuguese. However, in my past role, I have supported Mozambique. And in high-level meetings, it helps. You have interpreters or whatever. But you have to, most of the time, government officials also know a bit of English. So you are really just navigating through that. But I think for me, the best way to navigate through it is to show the willingness to learn. So I used to sit down before I would go to Mozambique, and I would, you know, learn como está, obrigado, like the little things, so that I'm able to say those, and even if I'm breaking my words or whatever, they are also comfortable in trying to communicate with me in English and break it.
They appreciate you're making the effort.
Yes. So in between there, in our broken pronunciations, we found a very good way of working. Yeah.
Okay. So you would encourage the young ones to focus on which languages, French and Portuguese?
Certainly in the region, French and Portuguese. In fact, in the continent, French and Portuguese. If you have ambitions of working at a now UN level, the other languages, of course, Russian, Chinese, Arabic, that you may want to consider.
Yeah. Now, talking about our people, Batswana, do you think they are really, is there an effort on their part to harness opportunities? Do you think Batswana are harnessing these opportunities in this field?
That's a very good question, particularly because I'm always looking at the Botswana government page. And when, let's say SADC, for instance, posts a job, and then the Botswana government page comes back to write, Batswana will not be allowed to apply for this position. And so the comments would be, but the organization said we should apply. Why are you stopping us? This is so unfair, right? Particularly because they also don't understand things like the quota system. And I don't think the government is doing, well, rather can be doing more to further explain why, right? I mean, there were positions recently, but because we are gunning for a very big position, the ES position, right?
ES for
the SADC Secretariat. Right? So because it works in quota, remember these are 16 countries and we have points, right? And of course the biggest office has the biggest points, which means that we are reserving that so that...
So one executive secretary could take the place of 5 managers? Or
not
10
managers, perhaps so. Yes.
So you could, just because we are gunning for argument's sake, executive secretary, we are not allowed to apply for vacancies in those lower areas.
Yes. Yes, and then someone would think it's a bad thing, right? But then if you look at an organization like the AU, where each post would have, we recommend for Batswana to apply, because there our quota is way high, you know, and people are just not applying.
And these quotas are determined by who and on what basis?
The quotas are determined by the system. In Botswana, for instance, we house the SADC Secretariat, number one, right? Which means we also have a much bigger quota system, because things like, and we also have a big advantage. Things like catering, you can't call in a caterer from Lesotho to come. So that's a Botswana advantage, right? Things like cleaning services, those are things that we benefit from by virtue of SADC being housed in Botswana, right? But then we also have like the same amount of quota where maybe we have 80 points, which is for junior staff, right? And or let's say technical stuff, right?
Yes.
I don't know exactly how much a point is, or you know, but let's say you have 80 in Botswana and we have 80 in South Africa, right? South Africa and maybe the ES position is 80, right? South Africa wants and there are jobs there, right? Botswana wants the ES position, which means we take all of those 80 points and we dedicate them to this, right? Meaning that South Africa, which is not campaigning for that job still has 80 points and has the liberty to maybe fill, 2 junior positions and 1 senior, and then they'll do that.
Yes.
But then if someone looks at it, they're like, but is Botswana really benefiting? They lack the overview of the fact that, there are services that you simply can't give to anyone else but a Botswana by virtue of that building sitting here.
Yes.
And that means...
And that makes up for a lot of
other things.
Yeah.
Services on its own, you can't go wrong. Outside COVID, all of those events, they would be catered for by Batswana. Even things like, travel agencies are local. These guys are getting salaries from banks which are local. So there's a lot of economic...
All right. And then I think the question still remains, why, in the reverse, why are Batswana not taking advantage of these positions? Why are they not applying?
I think there is a way in which we could really support Batswana to really participate in regional and continental and international, recruitment systems and processes. The responsibility, I haven't thought it through as to who it should lie with, but it lies somewhere there. It should lie with labor, it should lie with international foreign affairs, It could lie with what we call, so many, the national contact point for these organizations also. But there has to be some sort of capacity built towards that, right? They are, but the Batswana are there, and the talent is there.
The talent is available, but it's not taking advantage of.
Certainly. The platforms have not been built for Batswana to know that the opportunities are there and for them to be supported to apply for these.
Where is the low-hanging fruit, if you like? Where are the opportunities as we speak? If Botswana comes across this program, they might maybe pick 1 or 2 positions from these conversations, maybe.
I think also the opportunities are enormous. If you look at one of the low-hanging fruits outside COVID, by way of example, right? My time in Addis has shown me the amount of the value chain that exists with having these organizations in your country. By way of example, in Addis, because the AU sits there, organizations that are funding the AU do not have the time to run around and do the admin work of setting up a forum or whatever. But how many forums are they setting up every single week, right? Similarly in Botswana. However, you don't have events management companies that specifically deal with events management and protocol. You see, there needs to be that linkage to say, I'm specifically doing this for you as a target market, right? Catering also, travel agencies also. So once you sit down and really think, if I am, for instance, a service provider, because I also want to make this about entrepreneurs as well. How, if I'm not technical and I haven't studied politics, how can I still benefit from that building that sits in Botswana that I call the SADC Secretariat, What can I do? What does my business do that can ensure that they, as a business now, we are branching out to specifically now target to this, right? If it's an events management company, does this mean now you need to go get do a course on protocol, right? Or so that you are able to know that if I'm handling a summit, which is in Botswana, I know who needs to fly into the country first. I know how the flags are supposed to be positioned. I know who needs to walk into the room first, according to who's sitting as chairman or whatever.
Those things are very important.
Those things are very
Protocol,
important.
yeah.
Protocol is very important. But once you have it locked, then you are able to now your services are able to be outsourced for you to benefit in what should be a value chain. So I don't think we are really maximizing on the value chain in Botswana. Outside just looking for employment within these organizations, there are ways in which entrepreneurs can also benefit.
Yes. So how can we actively support Batswana, me and you and whoever else is out there? How can we actively support the youth to get into these spaces? I mean, surely we have to start somewhere.
Okay. So part of the work that I have been doing is really, I think we need to do a lot of incubation and mentorship, right? Because like you're saying, it starts somewhere. And we don't want, you know, 3 years ago, it was easy for me to really just navigate around the system 4 years ago and figure it out on my own. But I lose no value in using my lessons learned to ensure that another person doesn't have to spend 4 years to learn what I've learned, right? And it can only be through us creating those networks and giving access to our networks, because we have created such strong networks. I mean, you and I were sitting on a panel where we were talking to, and on the same panel with some of the founders or some of the people who worked on, you know, programming of the AFCFTA. You know what I mean?
Yes, I remember.
Now, so if there is a young person who wants to branch into that, we should be accessible, you know, even if it means us now having to create, you know, programs that really are dedicated to mentoring people around the space. I do it individually. People come to me and send me messages on social media to say, I want to go into international development. How do I do it? And I'm always happy to help. I think if I'm doing 5 there and you're doing 5 there, before we formalize it into an organization where Letlogela, Mogobe are empowering young people to get into development, we can still do it remotely, and you know.
No, that's very good advice. And then, and obviously we should be positioning ourselves post-ratification already for AFCTA. And one wonders whether there's any forum or any conscious effort to coordinate efforts around even AFCTA to get ready for those sort of opportunities.
I think in Botswana, the honest truth, and if I'm not shooting anyone on the leg, our organizations that are charged with these responsibilities are so branched out, right? And so it becomes very hard when you have many parastatals charged with almost the same responsibility to sort of like coordinate and work in a, I mean, I don't work for BITC, nor do I work for Business Botswana or CESA, you know, so I wouldn't know how they interrelate, but it makes it hard for us outside to know who should be doing what at where, and who should we be talking to post-ratification stuff, you know. Of course, the bulk of the work, or it starts with Ministry of Trade, but these parastatals are charged with that kind of responsibility. So I imagine, or I hope for a point where they are now put under one platform, you know, for them to come up with a systematic way of ensuring that, you know, there is, like I say, the Special Economic Zone Authority knows exactly what should be happening with the cattle, so that that leather becomes a bag, so that Business Botswana can now pick it up, you know, and then assess its quality and ensure that it's super, and then BITC regulates the market access, and so that should flow in that way. I won't say it does or it doesn't, I'm not sure, but I would imagine.
Well, on the evidence we have, it doesn't. I'm not in the system like you, so I can say it.
So these organizations are really where we now need to be looking, and we are. I'm hoping that Batswana have the courage to pick up the phone and call Business Botswana to say, what is this I'm hearing about me being able to sell my bag in Ghana? How true is it, you know? And the conversation then needs to be, okay, when are you taking my bag to take it there? So that the Business Botswana is like, no, currently I can't personally, but BITC is having a workshop in
Accra.
Or there's Africa Trade Fair, and you know, this one is sponsoring this one to go there, and you know, so
then the synergies will develop.
Then the synergies develop.
What are your last words to young people like you who may be watching there, in terms of them getting to this line of work? Any words of encouragement?
Certainly don't give up. I think we have the responsibility of ensuring that as us who are in the game, will do as much as, I personally will do as much as I can so that young people can see that this is possible. But it won't happen overnight. You have to have the zeal. You know, you have to be able to stand in front of seasoned experts, you know, and advise them on many issues that you may have only 3 years experience in, but you must believe in yourself. And once you believe in your abilities to do that, then the game changes.
And as entrepreneurs, they'll be asking themselves, are there any returns? How lucrative is a career in international development? You didn't expect that one.
It's quite lucrative.
Yeah.
I mean, I will personally say international development has money, especially when you're now on a regional contract and you're out of your home country, which is not where I am placed now. I'm still on a national contract because I'm in Botswana, living in Botswana. So no one should be calling me for money. I don't have it yet. But like you're saying, entrepreneurially, you always have to be looking in, you know, upfront. As an entrepreneur in development as well, I will say I am benefiting from consultancies in
exposure.
And exposure. So it is, for me, the value add is phenomenal. I could not trade this in for any other thing.
And we wouldn't finish a conversation like this without talking about COVID and asking whether A, COVID has affected the industry or the area, and B, has there been any COVID dividend, or what people say, you know, are some advantages that have come out of COVID, some of them unexpected?
Yes, I think I mean, I work in the region. Ideally, my life should not, before COVID, my life was this week in Eswatini, next week in, you know, Lesotho, the following week in Namibia, and just home on the weekends. So it meant that we had to learn new ways of doing things and interacting with ministries. And as you know, government officials are not, it took them time to really get used to Zoom and MS Teams, and it's still a challenge. They still prefer physical meetings, which is hard. But I know this is, and I say this with the most sense of humor ever. The advantage has been that because of COVID, there's a lot of international development work. Remember, the work is to develop Africa. COVID ruined a lot of things, especially economies. Now we have to start rebuilding, which means that programs will be built around rebuilding economies, strengthening health systems, you know, programs will be built around disaster preparedness, pandemic management, you know, that means more employment for us.
Wow, it's a beautiful way of finishing it. This is when you get to ask me a question, sir. What question do you have for me?
I think my question to you would be, how can we support our generation and the young people of Botswana today to have access to people like yourselves, you know? And before this started, you and I had a conversation about really the barrier that is there, you know? And I'm now personally asking you this, not as a question to say, you know, answer it technically and say, high level, this could be done. But what are the plans you have? You already have the nuggets, and this is amazing. What are the plans you have for capacity building of young people, especially being passionate about entrepreneurship and seeing how your passion could value add?
Well, pre-COVID, my attitude was to take advantage of just about every invitation to speak, to share, to talk on a platform. But that's not all, this is no longer easy to do because of reasons you are well familiar with. But we've cultivated the mentorship programs. We've just started recently with 2 cohorts, and I try to make myself available and share, because remember that it's not just the mentee who learns and benefits from a mentorship relationship, it's also the mentor. And me, I'm a voracious reader, I'm a voracious learner. I have a huge appetite to acquire and to acquire information and to develop based on that information. So apart from the Mogobe Nuggets, apart from Meet the Overcomers, I don't know whether you're familiar with Meet the Overcomers, which we started at Duma FM. There is this effort at mentorship. There's also activities within the framework of Angel Network Batswana, where I'm a co-chair of the mentorship committee. So the idea is to constantly be giving back as you learn from the ecosystem. And already I see that the same shift that you say you noticed earlier, I already see the shift in terms of consciousness, in terms of awareness, where Batswana are beginning to become more entrepreneurial and more keen to start their own enterprises. Even if you have an 8 to 5 gig, people are now much more comfortable with the idea of starting their own. And COVID has a lot to thank for that, partly because people have realized that you cannot keep all your eggs in one particular basket.
My catering business actually started from COVID.
Yes.
So, I on the weekends, yes, somewhere,
okay,
catering. But guys, Mr. Mogobe is the plug. But certainly, I would also like to be a part of that conversation. I'm really big on mentorship, and I know that there isn't, especially in the issue that we're discussing today, the mentorship there is quite low, especially because international development, most of these people that we talk about then get the jobs and go away. So I'm interested to learn more about the mentorship program, so I can see how I can be a part of that.
Okay, we'll talk some more after this.
Yeah.
Look at that camera over there. There's a young person there, an older person, whoever is behind that camera, who wants to be inspired, to be energized, by way of a few parting words.
All right. Thank you guys so much for listening. And really, it all starts with you. And I know this is so cliche. You will say you've heard a lot of mentors talk like this. You've heard a lot of people, public speakers talk like this. Conversations about how that glass is half empty. It does get really annoying and well played and overplayed. But one thing that should not get annoying is this chat. It will always start with you. And why I say it starts with you is because you will encounter challenges. You are the only person who decides whether these challenges are too myriad for you to go across. You are the only person who decides whether you want to look at these challenges as opportunities for you to shift paradigm, or for you to think differently, or for you to do different things differently, or are you giving up? No one has the right to come to tell you that your idea is too big or is too small. It will always be you. So take time, introspect, build your confidence, and always know that whatever you're doing, you are your biggest cheerleader. No one can get you to where you want to be unless you believe in yourself, your ideas, and your abilities. And then on, you will see life change.
Okay, can you share with them your contact details and your availability on these social media platforms where you can be accessed?
Yes, so I'm very prominent on Twitter. Not prominent, I'm very social. Yeah, like I click a lot on Twitter. So that's where you could, certainly find me, and I will reply to your DMs. My name on Twitter is Kennedy Leroy. I discuss a lot of other things as well there that has to do with international development. So if you are on Twitter, follow me there. If not, I'm on Facebook as Kennedy Letlhogela. I'm also on Instagram as Kennedy Leroy as well. And what else? Yes, my number is 723-83620. Yeah, you can also text me to ask for an appointment for us to talk, because sometimes you have to do that. You know, ask someone whether you can call them first, because meetings and stuff. Yeah. But do use any of those platforms to reach me, and I'll certainly make the time.
Okay. It remains for me, Mr. Kennedy Letlhogela, to thank you for taking the time out. We've benefited from your wisdom. We've certainly been enriched. Thank you for sharing your nuggets with us.
Thank you so much for having me.